suck. That's not something that you ordinarily tell people, right? But the reality is, some people actually do. Now, while there is a healthy way to feed off of people, a healthy, positive way, at that, some people go the vampire route. In Proverbs chapter 4, verses 14 through 17, the Bible tells us, enter not into the path of the wicked, and go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. For they sleep not, except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away, unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness, and drink the wine of violence. This is the characteristics of many who get no greater joy in life. They feed off it, they thrive off it, they get a high, as it were, off bringing you down to their level. The classic line, misery loves company, has never been truer. And so you have what I term vampires, because they suck at you until you have been left emotionally, spiritually drained. They complain ad nauseum to you about things that they could otherwise control by confronting the situation, contacting the person, or whatever the case may be, or give it to God. Or they leech off of you and your positivity in terms of how they seek to have a presence in your life, and they just make your life miserable because of their very presence, their very demeanor, their looks, their attitude. But the Word of God is clear on today. You see, some people, you just have to distance yourself from them. And it may sound unsocial, it may sound unchristlike, but the truth is, it's the Word of God. You're not avoiding them to be mean. You're not avoiding them to be cruel or harsh. You're just doing so for your soul's sake, for your sanity's sake. Now, some would say, would Christ do this? I submit to you that I've been saying for years, Christ's attitude towards certain people was, in fact, to stay away. And the ones he gravitated towards were the ones who needed him, not the ones who leached off him. Those, as the Bible calls them, the ones who were only looking for the fish and bread, that type of people, he sought to avoid and go towards people like the woman at the well, the prostitute caught in adultery, the blind man in John 9, and so on. Zacchaeus, Nicodemus, and many others, but not the leeches. My dear friends, today on the WordMaster says, I want you to understand clearly what I'm saying, because this can very well change your life, and by God's grace, change their life. In the description, I've attached a study I did on this topic, and I hope that you could take some time to go back and review it. But it is critical, my friends, it is critical that you understand that certain people cannot rent space in your mind and you not be willing to evict them. It is high time that you take back control of who you are. You ought not to be a victim so that others could feed. Yes, they see who you are and they drain you. They drain you. My friends, they drain you. But I want to leave us today on a high note. That being said, you ought to be a positive energy bank where people can withdraw emotional releases, emotional freedom from. You ought to be able to be a sounding board where someone can come to and find a safe space. You ought to be a person who is so strong in the Lord that even if people are indeed leeching off or vampiring off of you, that it does not bring you down ultimately to their level. You ought to be able to find a recharging station. You ought to be able to know and understand that even though, yes, it is not a positive thing that people are doing, but you ought to know that you don't have to stay empty, to stay dry, to stay spiritually, emotionally bloodless. You're not a victim, and therefore you ought not to be living like one. And so when people seek to sap the energy that's inside of you, whether by their mere presence being a counter to the programming that you are seeking to program yourself into, or they are actively leeching off of you by always drowning your ears or making your mind a dumping ground for their misery, you ought to be able to find the antidote to all of these things. And so today, the WordMaster's inspirational counsel to you is, yes, while you avoid the negativity, remember to stay charged up. Thank you for joining us today here on the WordMaster Says, and I'll see you in the next video.